Hello and welcome to this episode of Nothing Ventured with me, Aarish. Today in the studio with me, I have Amman Ahmed. Amman is the founder of Music for Pets, a Bootstrap business producing relaxing music and TV for man's best friends. In today's episode, we talk about learning what type of CEO you want to be.
It was an experience because I think you learn in terms of like what type of CEO you want to be.
Drawing out two paths of success to try and make a decision, bringing the science of music to man's best friends.
It was a natural progression. For us, it was more, I would struggle with focusing, especially at like a university. And I thought, that was the first idea, music to help you focus and music to help you sleep. And then just started looking into the science behind it.
How, having only spent $5,000 on marketing over 7 years, Amman built Music for Pets to a point where it was streaming to 50 million cats and dogs, and how a random email in Amman's junk mail ultimately led to the sale of the business. Why there's never a perfect market, so have your number in mind and don't get greedy. And as a founder, why you should make yourself disposable. Let's get straight into it. This is Nothing Ventured with me, Aarish, the podcast where I talk to the people behind the stories that make the venture capital ecosystem go round. I've been working with startups from pre-seed to Series C for the last decade, and companies that I've worked with have gone on to realize value and exit, or raise funds in excess of $500 million. I really hope you enjoy the episode, and if you have a guest that you'd love to see me have on, or you have a comment on any of the episodes that I've recorded so far, do reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. Let's get straight into it. Hello and welcome to this episode of Nothing Ventured with me, Aarish. Today in the studio with me, I have Amman Ahmed. Amman is the founder of Music for Pets, a Bootstrap business producing relaxing music and TV for man's best friends to help with a range of anxiety issues. Think of it as Netflix for your pets, or just Petflix. Music for Pets exited to Create Music Group in 2023, and Amman remains as president for Music for Pets and VP of Business Development. Prior to founding Music for Pets, Amman founded Rawmix, an app to help you discover emerging music, and Roundwaves, a network of YouTube channels that focus on making music to help you sleep, relax, and concentrate. Amman, welcome to the studio. Absolutely awesome to have you here with me today.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Let's get straight into it because we're going to be talking about Music for Pets, which you bootstrap all the way through to exit. But first, I'd like to hear about Rawmix, the company that you founded and for which you raised a modest amount of venture capital investment. So talk me through what happened there, and more importantly, the difference you found between working on a VC-funded business versus a bootstrapped one.
So the difference between two?
Yeah.
I think for me, it was an experience because I think you learn in terms of like what type of CEO you want to be. So you take a whole step back, right? And it's like, okay, what type of CEO do I want to be? What type of lifestyle do I want? And some people want to build that $1 billion business. Some people want to raise a load of money and IPO and blah, blah, whatever that's, and work 100 hours a week. That's success to them. And I just had to take a step back. And I think when I had that business, even though it was doing really well, we had VCs, investors, co-founders, all that stuff. There was a point where I realized I'm not a CEO, and I don't think I want to be a CEO, and I'm okay with that. And there was a lot of things that were going on in the background. I had to take a step back to the book that inspired me to be an entrepreneur from the start, which was like Tim Ferriss' The 4-Hour Workweek. And it was all about automation and building businesses around your lifestyle. And I think that really allowed me, obviously there was some drama that happened, if you want.
Yeah, I will definitely want to hear about the drama.
So a lot of it was obviously all my fault. But it was more in the sense that I think when I was building this business, I was being very you raise money, you have to be strategic with how you spend that, and then you have to raise the next round. And I think it was more the fact that there was a moment when I had a, obviously CTO, co-founder, etc., and then you are managing a lot of personalities, a lot of people, and then you realize you're actually not really a CEO, you're just a glorified HR manager, and you're not working on the actual product. So you become so distant from like, this was my idea, but I'm not even working on it, and you're just constantly raising and pitching and all this stuff, and it was, I think, a moment when I remember I went into the office once, and the attitude was like super like negative, and the whole team, I remember one of them said, can we take you into the boardroom
We want to have the talk.
have the talk? Yeah. And the whole team was just pretty much like a list of all the problems of me.
Yeah.
And I remember it's like, there's a lot of people against one, and I think that was kind of a moment where you're like, oh shit, like I fucked this one up. And as an entrepreneur, you have your ego. Your ego kicks in. I can fix this. I can fix this. But I think you couldn't repair that. Like that's it. And because they went behind my back to the VCs already knew about this.
Got it.
So it's one of those things where I kind of was like ushered out.
Yeah.
In that sense.
So hold on a second, right? Like, how old were you at this time?
Like 27. Maybe?
Right. So you're young, you're ambitious, you're like, I want to create something. You're obviously product led, right? You're someone that really loved the kind of music side of what you were doing and the product that you were building. And to your point, you've gone from that to like, okay, now I've got to go pitch VCs. I've got to manage a team. I've got to do all the things that CEO does. And I think this is like, I don't think it is an abnormal thing to happen, especially with young CEOs, young founders, where, you know, the reality of not having had the experience, right, of doing all that stuff comes and doesn't bite you in the backside. But like, there comes a moment where you're like, okay, am I the right person to lead this business forward? I can take it from 0 to 1. Can I take it from 1 to many? There are some that can. I mean, I would include myself in the vast number of people that can't, right? I'm not a build $1 billion business type person myself, but I'm very good at the 0 to 1 and managing maybe a small team of people, etc. Right? And I can build a valuable business. And it sounds like you took a lot of those learnings that you had from whether it's 4-hour work week or even just emotionally yourself, looked at yourself and said, this isn't right for me. Would that be fair? And equally, I guess, from an ego perspective, to your point, like if your entire team comes at you and basically dumps on you, like that's got to hurt, right? And you either have to then take like a very authoritarian kind of, screw you guys, this is what we're doing, or you check your ego and say, you know what, actually maybe they have a point, and as you say, I'm out.
Yeah, I think for me it was just like, I guess, taking a step back to be like, okay, I remember just going to like a meeting room. I listened to like some meditation just to clear my head. And then I got a whiteboard and I drew like 2 paths of like success. And in terms of like, okay, I could raise money. I could potentially turn this into like, you know, $1 billion business or $100 million business or whatever. And, you know, because it was getting a lot of attention. It was doing well. It just wasn't generating revenue at that time. And, or I had this little side hustle that was making like, whatever, like just a bit of money on the side. But I thought, okay, I could grow this and just have a lifestyle business. And then from there, I thought, okay, taking those 2 aspects of a lifestyle business or like potentially building something huge and then plugging in your mental and physical health around that as a priority. And I thought, yeah.
That's the path.
That's the path, the little side hustle.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's the 2 things you don't want to compromise.
Yeah.
You like, if you're building a business, every decision I make in business, like, how does this impact my mental and physical health? And then it's like, okay, will it make me money?
Yeah. So
that's
first off, am I happy? Am I content?
Yeah.
And then thereafter, okay, if it's making money, great.
Yeah.
And if it's not, clearly you probably need to do something. I mean, look, I definitely am of that camp, right? Where I know a lot of people who have made, have been successful, have made money, have had, successful exits. And of course, you say it's side hustle, making a little bit of money, but you ultimately exited it for a decent value, owning most, if not all of the business, right? So so it's kind of potatoes, right? Like you can still get a great outcome even if it's just something that you're working on, rather than having, you know, the juice of venture kind of trying to drive you down a certain pathway, which is not, let's face it, the right thing for every founder. And certainly in today's sort of environment, a lot of founders are realizing that maybe we shouldn't have taken venture in the first place, or are reconsidering whether venture is right for them. I mean, out of interest, is Rawmix still going, or what happened?
No. So that obviously went like as soon as I went, it went downhill.
Of course.
Standard happens, doesn't it? And I think for me, like I said, when I just had this motto to myself, I thought, okay. And also it's quite an isolating, like you go through this experience when your business fails, and, like, people start disappearing, and people who
start ghosting you.
Yeah, you thought people who actually cared don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a reminder, like, no one gives a fuck. And then you have to just like, okay, start again. And I thought, okay, I'm now gonna bootstrap this and take it to profitability, this side hustle. And my motto was like, I would rather sell crack than pitch to VCs.
Say that into camera, because that's a good one. Okay, I mean, yeah. Look, and again, having done this a few times, pitching VCs can be really tough, right? Like for a number of reasons. First of all, the power dynamic is always in their favor, right? You are there looking for money from them. Secondly, your business essentially requires their cash potentially to survive if it is in a place where it's not revenue generating, can't sustain its cost base, etc. And you're trying to grow it, and you're trying to kind of build in, you know, R&D. And it can feel like it's a very lonely place to be, because often it is only you as a CEO. You might have a co-founder in the room with you, but ultimately a VC wants to hear from the CEO first and foremost. But secondly, it can feel like it's at the detriment of the actual business, because you're spending all your time, to your earlier point, all your time pitching VCs looking for that next tranche of cash versus actually building out the product, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. It's distracting. Like, you would just pitch and pitch and pitch. And I think this time round, it was like, okay, how, at the end of the day, like any business, it's just profit versus loss. Like, that's it, it's your P&L, right? And if you just strip it back, and like, okay, and then to access customers, right? It's like, how do I access my customers? By removing all the middlemen. And how do I do it the cheapest possible way? Just those two questions. Every decision you make makes life easier.
You've just distilled finance into like 2 sentences, right? Like, make sure that what you make is more than what it costs you to make it, and you'll be happy. My dad used to say, you know, if you earn £1 and spend 99p, you'll be happy. If you earn £1 and spend £1, you know, that's a surefire way to make you unhappy. Well, let's talk about you know, what you ended up bootstrapping to exit, right? So you've always yourself had a passion and been passionate about music, and you've struggled with focus, I think. So building a music business that helps with anxiety feels like an obvious step. But why pets?
It was a natural progression. For us, it was more, you know, I would struggle with focusing, especially at like a university. And I thought, you know, that was the first idea, like, you know, music to help you focus and music to help you sleep. And then just started looking into the science behind it. And then from there, people would say, oh, I used it on my dog as a joke. And then my music producer, like, he, you know, talking about doing everything efficiently, like the music producer I found, he was based in El Salvador, right? And that happens to be one of the most violent countries in the world.
Sure.
And his dog and cat would get anxiety. Obviously, anything disturbances, shall we say, that happened in his neighborhood, they'd get anxiety. So we thought, okay, let's experiment and see if it works. And just a few frequencies here and there, playing around. Like, some of the stuff we made were quite bad, but I think what we did was, it was okay enough just to go on YouTube and try to get some feedback, collect some data. And then that was it. Like, the product and so many entrepreneurs are perfect. I've come across so many entrepreneurs that ask me for advice, and they use the word perfect.
Yeah, perfect is the enemy of good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, your product just needs to be 51% like good. then just build on top of that from there.
Mm.
And that's what we say. It's like, is it 51% good? And it was. I'm like, okay, let's go from there.
Is it enough to get the feedback? So, I mean, is it music in the way that I could I sit and listen to it and dance to it, or is it very specifically attuned? Like, are there certain frequencies, noises, whatever that are specifically kind of for dogs, for cats, for whoever? Like, how? Like, talk me through, that concept. Is it something that I can have playing in the living room whilst I'm doing some work with my, not that I have a dog, but with a dog sort of sat there kind of chilling out to it? Or is it they need to kind of listen with their earphones on, in silence?
It is music designed for dogs and humans to enjoy together.
Got it.
And the reason why that is because your energy passes on to your dog anyway. So that's another way of like calming them down. And it's the certain frequencies that dogs can hear that obviously you can't. But generally, it's just designed for you to both enjoy.
Yeah.
And then there's certain things, for example, like with music for cats, there might be certain nature sounds that cats respond to quite well. Same with dogs, there's like certain nature sounds. So there's a lot of it is just A/B testing and collecting that data and then iterating. And then you have so many different variations of like subgenres you start to create. So
Hip hop for dogs. Yeah.
We've not got to hip hop for dogs yet, but the closest thing we got to is lo-fi.
Yeah. Okay.
Lo-fi for dogs. We started experimenting with.
So that's like kind of lo-fi beats, just like, okay. So how do you then test whether it's working? Like, how do you measure the reduction in anxiety in these animals? Like, is it just anecdotal? Like, an owner comes and says, yeah, my dog was really frantic, and then when I put the music on, they just chilled right out? Or is there something more scientific, I guess, in that?
I think a lot of it is like, it goes back to any brand or product or whatever. It's just genuinely be obsessed with your customers. So just ask open questions all the time. Build relationships. And it's like, from there, we start collecting data. We know what works. We look at like different metrics, watch time metrics, drop-off rates, et cetera.
So you can use those as proxies.
Yeah. And then, but what's really powerful is the feedback we get when we get the comments, and the feedback when people send us videos of their dogs like watching it. We get so many, like thousands of videos. So that's data for us to look at as well. And then we just build on top of that. Like, we do loads of surveys, etc., and we just collect enough to be like, okay, this is working, this isn't working, and then just build on it from there. And then overall, as the brand keeps on building, without us spending a penny, by the way, like in the 7 years I had the business,
nothing on marketing.
My total marketing spend in 7 years was $5,000, which is £3,000.
What?
Yeah.
Like over 7 years. And how large is your catalog of music?
When we sold, I think 5,500 tracks.
Okay. And so 5,500 tracks, and roughly what sort of audience?
At one point, we were getting like 50 million cats and dogs around the world streaming our music.
So anyone in the direct-to-consumer industry, pay attention. 50 million cats and dogs. Okay, like hopefully, well, presumably your business may be looking at something else, but 50 million cats and dogs streaming this music, $5,000 over 7 years on marketing.
Yep.
So what pushed that organic growth? Like, was it word of mouth?
Word of mouth. So we did surveys. Like, when we did surveys, we said, asking them just to find out what is the multiplier effect of word of mouth. And at one point, I think it was for every one person, they would tell 7 other people.
Wow.
With passion.
Yeah, proper virality.
Yeah, proper and we're like, oh, okay, this is mad.
Yeah.
And then you just look at like certain metrics, like how much is being shared on WhatsApp, et cetera, and like the sharing. So that was like, okay, this is absolutely insane.
But were people organically searching for this, or do you think that only after kind of a bit of that viral growth happened?
A lot of it was just like how we place our products in front of other people. So the easiest thing we did was called it "Relax My Dog."
Yeah.
So you go to Google and type in "how to relax my dog."
You're immediately top of the
number one, everywhere.
Yeah.
And then because we're doing so well on YouTube, obviously owned by Google.
Yeah. You start ranking better.
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah. I mean, that is incredible. I mean, like if if anyone was to tell me, you know, that they got to 50 million streams with a budget of 5,000, I'd be biting the hand off. No pun intended to our dog listeners. But and so explain to me, how did you monetize then? Was that all through YouTube ad sort of revenue, or what was the kind of model for you?
Yeah, so YouTube ad revenue, brand partnerships, brand deals. We own the rights to all the music 100%.
Yeah.
So like we had publishing rights, like Spotify, Apple Music, all the music streaming services, and we had a subscription platform that we built, and then other like affiliate stuff as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just monetized through that.
Just kept going, and I guess you could have loads of products. You could have, you know, music for pets, leashes, and so on and so forth. And like, out of interest, I guess, was there a point where there was an inflection point where that revenue just started really kind of growing exponentially, or was it just like a steady growth in revenue over time?
I'd say it was a steady growth in revenue. Obviously, like COVID was,
Sure.
I actually had at one point had a huge negative impact, a huge negative impact. I remember at one point I was like, this business is done. Like, I actually started looking for jobs.
But COVID would have been the ideal time,
but then that's the thing. Then it just turned around so quickly and ended up becoming our best.
Period.
Yeah, best period. So it was like a massive spike down, then a big spike up.
Yeah, I guess you'd have had like everyone's at home. Actually, this is quite chilled. And then suddenly the reality of like, we're stuck at home for the next 3 months, and, you know, kids trying to study, and, you know, everyone cooped up in one place, can't go out, one walk a day or whatever it was.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? You've suddenly got everyone more anxious. I wonder whether actually that, because the same thing happened with like Headspace, right? Like, I think during COVID they launched on Netflix, and they saw, you know, Calm and Headspace saw, I think, if I'm not mistaken, a massive uptick in usage around that time, right? So I guess why not pets, right? Like, and pets are, for most people, like a valued member of the family, and therefore if they are getting anxious, that, again, to your point, it goes both ways, right? If your dog is not comfortable, if your cat is, you know, playing up, that's going to have an impact on the family overall. I think that's super. I mean, look, as a CFO, I'm sat here and I'm just sort of blown away. I'm like, if I could get my podcast to do 50 million streams off the back of $5,000 in marketing, I think I'd be a pretty happy person. So let's talk about the journey, right? I'd love to understand the journey at Music for Pets that culminated in the exit to create Music Group. Like, was this something you had planned? Had you been in other conversations already, or did this all kind of happen fairly unexpectedly and organically?
So specifically the journey about the exit?
Yeah.
So for me, it was something I never planned.
Yeah.
For me, it was just literally just grow the business until it fails and just keep on making money.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, our profit margins were super high anyway.
Yeah.
So
you only had, how many employees did you have?
4 employees. That was it.
Like
and the
madness.
rest were like freelancers with a very, very lean like, I think our margins were like 80-70%, something like that.
Yeah. So it's just the cost of your production guy.
It's just a pure like profit play.
Yeah.
And you know, on Company's House, you know, your numbers are public. So once you pass the like a certain
threshold,
EBITDA number, like a lot of M&As, investment bankers will troll and you know, see who they can find to sell, and they would constantly like reach out to me saying, we can sell your business, and they then, I was like, okay, let's give it a shot, see what happens. And they would then shop me around to all the obvious ones, like, you know, the pet food companies, the pet retailers,
Purina, all these sort of people.
Yeah, those kind of, obviously I'm not going to be specific on names, but
Sure.
do you know what I mean? Like those type of people. And God, I remember like just chatting to them, and I think there's one person that I was chatting to who was like doing the DD, and their job title was like corporate, like head of innovation. Yeah, head of innovation. And it was the dumbest fucking conversation I ever had in my life.
I've met a lot of these people.
Yeah. And you know that people that try to be entrepreneurs, but really you're an employee.
Yeah. Well, no, they are employees being like, told like be entrepreneurial.
Their job title is like entrepreneur in residence.
Yeah.
I'm like, just shut the fuck up, seriously. Like, and it's got to a point where I was like, no, I'm not doing this, because if I sell it, like, I'm just gonna get real frustrated. And I kind of just said, to the M&A people, I said, look, you find me a buyer, like, it has to be on my terms. And my terms were like, you know, pretty clean, should I say. Like, it has to be my terms. I don't want any golden handcuffs. And anyway, I just told them, I was like, yeah, forget this. I'm not entertaining this. And then I just walked away and I said, I'm just going to continue building the business.
Sure.
Continue building the business. And then it was like a year later, I got like a random email. And this was probably intuition, but like sometimes I check my junk mail and there's a random email in my junk. And and I was so close to pressing delete. And I was quickly, you need to scan it. I scrolled to the bottom and I was like, oh, who's this? This looks familiar. Like it actually looks familiar. And there's a big like EDM label in New York called Trap Nation.
Yeah.
And then it was also like a random like LinkedIn connection from another agency. Anyway, they were both owned by Create Music Group.
Right.
So then we had a chat and all that stuff, and then the rest was just like, okay, this sounds interesting. Let's talk.
So you found like so you Create were like a good fit. They were on your terms. It was like an organic conversation. Why were they looking for a catalog of music for pets? I mean, like what? I mean,
yeah. At first it was a bit weird because at first I'm like,
because they're a hip hop label, right?
They're a hip hop label, yeah. And they have some, you know, she was some controversial names attached to it. So, and that's when, you know, I went out and I thought, you know, how's this going to work? Because I think an artist that they had was like Tory Lanez. And, you know, there was a situation going on with him. And I thought, how's this all going to fit? And, but then I got to understand the music industry. And I didn't realize, because I was building this business in Manchester, I didn't realize I was accidentally building like a record label.
So can I just take a step back, actually, right? Because this is a question I'd love to ask you. I mean, I know, you know, a few entrepreneurs, a few investors from Manchester, Birmingham, etc. Like, what is it like trying to build a business in Manchester, but like a tech business or a digital business, let's say, in that ecosystem? Because it feels like London gets all of the noise, and obviously tons of VC firms, loads of founders, obviously lots of kind of people running through the city, lots of money floating around, all the rest of it. And, you know, I think there's a lot of work been done in the Midlands, in the north of England, in Manchester, Birmingham, and then Scotland and Wales and elsewhere to try and, you know, pull people together and create that ecosystem. But did you feel like you had that support out there, or was it lacking from that perspective?
There was a little bit of support, but it was an interesting one. I think I realized right from the start that I was building something so unique that no one could relate to or understand.
Yeah. It was too different.
It was just way too different. There was no like comparables or anything like that. I do see from a general perspective, Manchester is evolving. And, you know, there's like more VCs, there's more action going up. There's a lot more exited founders up there. Some of them that have exited here in London and moved to Manchester.
Yeah.
So I think slowly it's changing. I think it's becoming like, you know, a second London. And yeah, I think, you know, it depends what type of business you're building as well.
Sure.
I think if you're building like a big fintech thing,
you want to be in London because that's where
here or New York or whatever.
Yeah.
But for me, I built something in such isolation that like I thought I was building a pet company. But I was actually building like a record label.
Yeah, you said. Yeah.
So that was it. So, and I was building it, just had my head down. And it's just once I got exposed to the music industry, you know, I went to Hollywood and going back and forth and all, I started to understand how the music industry works. And I was like, oh shit, like, for example, like no one owns 100% of their music.
Yeah.
And I thought that was normal. But like, I did not realize that is like incredibly rare.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, it was a blessing to be so naive to the music industry.
You just built the business that you wanted to build without thinking about how to structure it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because most labels, obviously, there's different structures to everything. Whereas I was just like, fuck this, I want to own everything. Everything. Because in my head, I never built the business to sell, but I built the business to be clean.
You didn't want the external investors. You didn't want like tons of employees. You wanted it like get in, get out, Like you could walk away from it if you needed to walk away from it, but equally if it kept growing, it kept growing.
Yeah. It was like, how much of my intellectual property, my supply chain, everything can I own in-house as much as possible?
Yeah.
That it just runs on autopilot and everyone is replaceable, including myself.
Yeah. So if you got it to a place where you could run it with like a couple of admins sitting in the Philippines, then happy days. You could just go live on a beach and take the income, right? And then so with Create, like talk me through the kind of end of that story. So how did they, was it a long process, a short process? How did you ultimately come to it? And how do you value that business? I mean, like, because again, to your point, it's not as if you have like industry comps, right? Do they value it on the basis of the catalog, on the number of streams? Like, how was that done?
Yeah, so I obviously can't go into the details of how it was valued,
Sure.
but all I can say is that I was happy with it.
Okay.
And it was just one of those things where that conversation, I think I just got to know them.
Yeah.
And they just understood everything super quick. They understood YouTube really well.
Yeah.
They understood like music rights, etc., etc. And I thought, okay, this is going to be like a really good like integration.
Yeah.
And I saw what they were doing, and just a bunch of young guys, building something so big. A few days ago they got valued like $1 billion now. They just closed a huge private equity round. So they're growing like insanely quick, and I just felt inspired. I felt like
this is a home for the business, but it's a home for me as well.
Yeah, it's a home for me, but also potentially it will open up more doors to me as well. Like if I sold to like a large pet retailer or whatever it is, I know I'd be stuck in a cubicle somewhere.
Probably in Switzerland. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things. I thought it's going to be like.
I almost worked for Purina. Well, I say almost worked. I think I interviewed there when I was about 22 and was not overly impressed. But just going back to that valuation question, right? So you obviously appreciate you don't want to go into the detail. It makes sense. But I guess then the question is, did you both agree on a methodology for that valuation that made sense? Or was it kind of like, this is what we want to offer, and you're like, okay, no, this is what I want to take? I mean, how did you kind of do that?
So I think it got a little bit beyond my remit. That's when I got an investment banker involved.
You got an advisor. Okay.
Yeah, got an advisor who specifically does it in the music industry.
Okay.
So he understood everything. And then I got a lawyer, then I got a tax person, and I just let them deal with it all. In my head, I had a figure.
You had your number, yeah.
I had my number.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, this is...
Okay, so was the number better, the same, or slightly worse than your number? Because only you know the number. I don't. Yeah.
I'd say all I can say is they're very, very good.
Okay. You're happy with the number.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that
definitely.
And I think that's the thing, right? Like I think a lot of founders obsess over the large payout, the large exit, and that's why obviously a lot of people try and build a venture-backed business, because the ultimate goal is $1 billion, and that's great, but the $1 billion doesn't mean that you get $1 billion. You may get nothing actually in some instances, or you've been diluted down so heavily. And I think about it, at my age, exiting a business that pays out 1, 2, 5, 10 million, for argument's sake, because I own the majority of it, if not all of it, is actually a much better outcome and a lot less stress, to your point, than shooting for the billion, which is in any case a 1% chance, right? Or a 10% chance or whatever it is. It's a lower chance. And again, your dilution means that you don't actually know what you're going to end up with at the end of the day as well, right? So, I mean, congratulations, I guess, is the first thing. I guess one question that two questions that flowed. Like you said, you didn't want golden handcuffs, but you are still with Create. So you obviously did find a home there, right? So you're happy to continue with them. And that wasn't just for earnout. That is presumably that's a place where you're happy to be. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's a good place to be. I'm learning a lot. I'm seeing what they're up to, how they're growing, how they're navigating the music industry. And I find it and they're actually, a really cool young group of people to work with. So I I'm happy for now.
Yeah. Well, for now is always for now, right? Like, you never know what's going to happen down the track. So actually, like 1 year. So when we first met, I think it was literally a year to the day from that exit. So 1 year on, is there anything you'd have done differently? And what would be your advice to founders who are looking at selling their businesses at the moment, especially given the market conditions that many are facing, especially in the venture-backed world, I guess?
So market conditions, there's always going to be market conditions. There's never a perfect market. And I think with any founder, just have like a number that, you know, whatever your number is, just have that. And I think when you get greedy, that's when you fail. And I think a lot of founders, you know, I'm not going to sell it yet. I'm going to wait until it gets bigger and whatever, that's fine. You do your thing. But for me, it was just more like, this is good. This is
I could wait for 4 years for a better outcome, but that could also be a worse outcome. It's the right number at the right time. I'm in the right place. It's time to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so interesting because I've come across a lot of founders that their headline price has been a lot more than mine, but they've walked away with a lot less, a hell of a lot less. So they just worked super hard for like nothing.
Yeah. I mean, you're living the dream, let's face it.
Exactly.
But yeah.
So I'd say for any founder, like have a super clean business. Try to make yourself disposable.
Always be working on making yourself redundant.
Yeah, exactly. Make yourself disposable, because then you get better terms in your business. Because if they're buying you and the business, then you really get golden handcuffs.
Yeah.
And you're probably not going to hit your targets or anything like that anyway.
Yeah.
So just make yourself disposable so you get a really good upfront price, and make sure everything is clean in-house as much as possible. And then, and that's it. And obviously get your taxes in order. Some things you have to do 2 to 3 years before your exit. I got very lucky with some of the things I did.
Okay. So you planned in advance.
I planned,
without thinking about planning, presumably.
It was always in the back of my head.
Yeah.
But there were certain things I did with my plans that triggered other things that were like, oh, wow.
Maybe I should think about doing this or doing that.
No, actually triggered things in a way that like actually dramatically benefited me.
Okay.
From a tax perspective.
Yeah.
So I'd say, yeah, definitely plan.
Yeah. Plan, but let's be very clear. Pay your taxes. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Look, I mean, so I think the point you made there about, you know, as a founder, you need to make yourself disposable. The way I think about that is, you know, people don't buy, or like businesses don't buy other businesses. They don't, you know, they obviously they're buying a business, but what they're really buying is a set of processes, right? They want a process that they can repeat. And like, if they can replace the founder with a low cost, you know, salesperson or product person or whatever, right? They want to be able to integrate and be able to do that without, to your point, having everything tied to the founder. Why? I mean, like I think about it in terms of my own business. In my own business today, I am the business. I am the brand of the business now. We're trying to build that out so that we have processes in place and we have, you know, the potential, exactly as you say, for someone to kind of slip in underneath me and kind of do the grunt work. But as long as I am the brand of the business, any sale, which, you know, at the moment is not on the table and, you know, is probably several years away, even if it were, any sale would be contingent on me coming along with the business. And the thought process that keeps going through my head is, well, if I'm going to have to go and work somewhere else anyway, I'd rather just keep running the business than try and sell it. Like, yes, it would be great to have a cash lump sum in my pocket, but the reality is also, I myself personally believe I'm both unemployable and would hate being employed, right? I just don't think that I could. And this goes back to your first point around lifestyle and the choices you make around mental health and physical health. You know, I've said it on the podcast before, I'll say it again. I enjoy being able to wake up when I want to wake up because I'm not a morning person. I enjoy being able to go for a run during the day when I go for my run, and I have a run every single day. I enjoy being able to spend the time with my wife and my kids in the evening and then go back to work or not or whatever, right? And I think, again, to your point, and like it is very normal with a VC-backed business that you don't have, it's not even work-life balance, but it's just you don't have, I guess, the quite the autonomy, because the minute you've taken someone else's money, you are on a timer, right? Like they will be looking for a return one way or the other, right, down the track. So, is there anything you would have done differently? Do you think?
Do you know what? Everything worked out perfect.
So it was just vanilla.
Yeah, it was actually. There's so many things that could have failed.
Sure.
So many things that could have fell apart.
Well, the first one being recognizing that this was actually a business, right? In the first one, so it was a side project.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And it's weird, like you obviously you connect all the dots, like how did all this, there's so many like points of failure.
Yeah.
I think the best way to describe, I'm a proper like space nerd or whatever, and they'll talk about, the James Webb Telescope.
I don't, but fine. Okay. Yeah, okay.
So it's actually, it was...
Wait, is this the one that took the pictures of Jupiter recently? Or
I don't know, but it went 1 million miles away from Earth.
Okay.
Anyway,
yeah,
it's the most complicated telescope because it had to unfold in space.
Yeah.
And I think it had like 148 points of failure in it. And it just reminded me of that. There was like probably 150 points of failure in this whole process. And it all fell into place.
So let me ask you that question, right? Because I think a lot of founders don't always recognize the part that this plays in their success. How much of it was luck?
You create your own luck, right?
Oh yeah, that's that. Yeah, okay, fine. That's the answer. Yeah,
love it. Yeah. Obviously, people do have people that say, "Oh, you got lucky, you found a niche or whatever it is." But then, it's one of those things like, the more attempts you have, then luck is going to play a part in it, right?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, look, I think I'd agree. I think you absolutely do create your own luck, right? And it is a journey. It isn't an event. And I think ultimately, yes, there is an element of luck in terms of timing. Had you have not checked your junk email, or if you deleted it without looking at it or whatever, okay, maybe they'd have reached out again. Maybe they wouldn't have, right? But as it turns out, you did look at it, and that all worked out in the right way. But I think none of that is to detract from the fact that what you went out and did was build something of value that people wanted, both as consumers as well as a potential acquirer. So I think that is, forget commendable. That's just an exciting thing to hear. And I think, again, on this podcast, obviously, we talk to predominantly venture capital investors. We've had exited founders who've raised venture capital. We've got founders that are still kind of in the process. But often the people that seem the happiest, if I'm honest, are those bootstrap founders that have been in charge of their own destiny, right? Like we've had a couple of people who've been on who, only raised a couple of rounds of angel capital, but that was their plan, raise a couple of rounds and then take it to X and then exit. And they managed to do that. And then, of course, we've had others that maybe have been plugging away for a few years and not entirely sure where they're going to go from here. So I think it sounds like you really had the best event possible for yourself, right? Whether the monetary terms, whether it's still sitting with Create, and you've had some incredible news recently. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Oh yeah. So basically, I think this was like 6 months ago. A huge organization, the biggest organization in the music industry. I got recommended by 2 music industry executives, and then I had to do an application, a voting. It takes 6 months or whatever it is. Anyway, I got an email a few days ago that I have now been accepted as a member in the Recording Academy, which is the Grammys, and you get to vote. You get to go to the Grammys. I think there's loads of events around the Grammys that you get to go to, because it's just a society of the highest society in music that's exclusive. It's difficult to get into. But once you're in, your network
blows up.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So it's a weird one, because that happened a few days ago, but I'm still kind of digesting that one.
Yeah, well,
does it feel real?
I'm sure the first Grammys you go to, you'll digest it pretty well. So again, anyone needs a ticket to the Grammys, you know where to find Armin. Okay, well, look, finally, and I know that you may not necessarily have an answer that you want to give to this, but what is one thing that you have a contrarian conviction about from any area of life, whether that's work, politics, socially, or at home? What is the hill that you would die on defending?
I don't know. I actually don't know.
You don't know. You see, I get the impression that you're just a nice guy. You don't really want to. You don't have anything that you feel like you need to be overly pointed about, right, when you speak. So it just sounds like you kind of led the blessed life.
Yeah, 100%. I think I don't know, whatever's happening, I'm just
Go with the flow.
go with the flow.
Go
Take
with
a
the flow.
backseat, yeah.
Well, that's kind of contrarian. Like, just go with the flow, right? You don't always have to be planning for everything. You just take life as it comes. Amman, it's been absolutely incredible having you here in the studio. I thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure. For our audience, where's the best place for them to find you? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Twitter?
Everywhere,
Where can they find you?
LinkedIn, Twitter, or X, or whatever it's called, and Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, those three.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.